And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:09 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wangs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, now that he's running for re-election, Kevin DeLeon is finally talking to the press again, and he told Channel 7 that he's a changed man and should be given a second chance.
But I engage with a lot of folks, in the religious community, other community leaders, and it was a process. It's a journey, and quite frankly, it's not a process that's necessarily over.
We now have collected one from him, too.
Quite frankly.
Now, since we've invoked Kevin DeLeon's name, is it time?
Everybody rise.
Madam President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Mr. DeLeon, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning?
Thank you very much, Madam President. It'd be an honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Indivisible. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Every time I hear that, I get so proud of my own government. I think about going back to school and getting a PhD in political science so I can be a fake doctor, too.
That is one of our favorite clips that we've been playing here for over 2.5 years since it came into existence in January of 2021.
800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, as many of you sports fans know, when you go to Angel games or you go to Dodger games, they have different promotional nights. On Friday nights, they shoot off the fireworks. Some nights, they give you a bobblehead doll.
The Dodgers just had to cancel Julio Urias' bobblehead night.
Oh, yes. Well, his bobblehead hits the female bobbleheads over and over and over again. And in Anaheim, when it's halfway to Christmas, they have a promotion called Christmas in, I think it's June or July? What's the halfway point?
July.
I don't know. Okay, we'll go with that. And they decorate the stadium up for Christmas. They put up the ornaments. They put up the garland. Sometimes they give away Santa hats. Sometimes it's stockings. You get the idea. Well, let me tell you, it's not December the 25th. And it's not the halfway point to Christmas at Angel Stadium. But Christmas is coming early for all of you good boys and girls in this audience because, Randy, you have found some absolutely delicious audio of one Katie Porter.
That's right. The Orange County Congresswoman who is running to replace Dianne Feinstein in the Senate had a fundraiser, I believe, in Hollywood, and one of her supporters just happened to film the entire thing on camera, and thank God she did, because Katie Porter realized the one thing that Adam Schiff has over her that she needs to work on is stand-up comedy.
Now, when Adam Schiff does stand-up comedy, is he more observational like Jerry Seinfeld? Is he filthy like Andrew Dice Clay? Is there a lot of racial material like Dave Chappelle? What do we got?
From what we have heard, because no one ever seems to post the videos of him doing it, just talking about it, all we hear is that he says he's actually very funny.
Okay.
Katie Porter, she's got a different style. Here's an example of one of the many jokes you're going to hear today from Orange County Congresswoman Katie Porter.
But the thing I think that makes me stand out even more is the political leader that we need to be shopping for. I have knocked hundreds of doors in Huntington Beach, and I am still having fun in politics.
Replay that one more time.
But the thing I think that makes me stand out even more is the political leader that we need to be shopping for. I have knocked hundreds of doors in Huntington Beach, and I am still having fun in politics.
Why does it always have to be a food reference with her? Shopping for?
She's going down the Senate aisle. She's right next to the Entenmann's display.
Those impulse items.
Let's go ahead and start at the very beginning of this. And there's two things that Katie Porter loves to tell you before she tells you anything about her vision. She goes to the grocery store, and she's a single mom. Let's start with Katie Porter being a single mom.
It's true. I am a single mom. The San Francisco Chronicle called me Congress's single mom.
Just the way that the audio is recorded, doesn't it sound like she's at Ha-Ha's in North Hollywood?
She could be if it was Hollywood. You know what they say about North Hollywood?
What's that?
It's 5 miles from Hollywood and 1,000,000 miles from stardom.
To which I do not want responsibility for some of those people. But I am raising 3 lightly...
Do you hear one of these laughs here? It is the most faint-hearted, I'm not really laughing, but I've got to play along laugh. Ha 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 ha. Do you hear it?
Yeah, that's somebody's date. She doesn't even know who Katie Porter is.
For some of those people.
She was being charitable.
We're not going to get through half of this sound today.
But I am raising 3 lightly supervised children. They are getting a little bit older, which means they need even less supervision. But they are now 17, 15, and 11. And they, too, have been on this journey with me. They are...
What journey? Trashing the minivan?
Well, she writes about that extensively in her book.
They are of mixed views of my run for the Senate because if I lose, they get a dog. So they're...
This is the easiest crowd. I'd love to play for this crowd.
If I lose, they get a dog.
Dog. So they're... I'm not sure I'm going to...
Oh, someone really liked that one. That was a knee slapper.
Who was that?
I'm not sure.
Oh!
It sounds like they just sat on a tack.
I'm not sure I'm going to get my oldest son's vote, but I'm still working on it.
Well, you know what they say. To truly hate her, you have to know her.
So we've got a litany of topics to go through. John, I'm going to give you the choice. We've got on the board oversight, being a policy warrior, housing, mental health, consumer protection, income inequality, income maintenance, AI, committees, federal, state, and local government, or reaching out to disaffected voters. We've got sound on all of those categories and more on the Katie Porter Comedy Hour.
I'll take mental health for 200, Randy.
This one starts kind of dark.
Address death by law enforcement killings unless we address mental health. 1 in 4.
Oh, boy.
1 in 4 fatal police encounters ends the life of someone in acute mental health crisis. When you call 911 and you have a fire, who would you like to come? Fireman.
Oh, she's doing crowd work now.
They're playing along, too.
Fire, who would you like to come? Fireman. Preferably, in my case, a single cute one.
Oh, boy.
Oh, she's dipping her pole in that pond?
When you...
I had to sit in traffic for 90 minutes today because of the freaking 405, and I was laughing the entire time.
Yeah, I don't think she meant to. Well, maybe she did mean to be funny there. Can you imagine being a firefighter showing up over there because I'm guessing it's a grease fire, and you're there to put it out, and she starts showing you some leg, trying to be seductive?
It's lunchtime, John. Nobody wants to picture that.
When you call 911 and you have a fire, who would you like to come? Fireman. Preferably, in my case, a single cute one. If you have a mental health crisis, who should come? A mental health professional.
Oh, good. We're advocating for 912 on a statewide scale.
Okay, let's revisit the news cycle of the last week, shall we? We had some guy who was nuttier than a fruitcake get access to a gun and show up right next to where an LA County Sheriff's deputy was sitting in their vehicle and assassinate them for no reason. That person had multiple suicide attempts and had voices in his head. If he is having a psychotic episode, You need someone with a badge and a gun to show up because this person is dangerous. And if you don't send someone with a badge and a gun, you're sending in the safety ambassadors or the social workers like lambs to be slaughtered.
This is like the dark underbelly of 911 that we didn't really think about when we created 911, which is our dispatch doesn't have all of the right responders. Those folks are amazing. Dispatchers are amazing professionals. They are incredible at figuring out what the problem is, but we have to give them the right responders. So this bill would create a grant program to enable cities and counties to create dedicated mental health response units to send in lieu of police. And it's important.
And then who do they call when they get shot?
They call the police. Again, maybe I'm using the wrong terminology here. Because when I say that what Katie Porter wants to do is send the lambs to be slaughtered, all she can think about is mint jelly.
And it's important here to understand all of the research, all of the pilots that are out there in places like Eugene, Oregon, and Denver, Colorado, and ready for this? Huntington Beach does this.
Why is Huntington Beach her punchline? That's her, isn't that part of her district?
It is, and Huntington Beach is a conservative area that I'm sure she despises.
Beach does this. Show that sending police with mental health providers leads to a command and control, two different approaches. It is best to send the mental health provider when dispatch, in their professional judgment, believes it's a mental health problem. They can always call for police backup. They do so in less than 0.5%. This is way cheaper, it is way better, and it connects people directly to care. And in about 80% of those calls, the person is not institutionalized or incarcerated. They are connected to an immediate follow-up appointment the next day.
And they end up back on the streets, which means you've accomplished nothing.
Wait, so the mental health provider says, here's the phone number to a therapist? Bye-bye.
Or even the same day. So this is a big part of what I've been working on. It's a really big part of how we're going to address police violence, particularly police violence against people of color. The second thing I care a lot about is youth mental health. And so I have a bill here to help colleges and universities. There was just a big New York Times article about this. Colleges and relating to my alma mater, Yale, and how they basically tell people who have mental health problems, I'm sorry that happened to you, and do not come back. That is a violation of...
I don't think that one was a joke, but this audience is ready to laugh.
No. Well, what is she suggesting? Have a separate number for people to call when you have someone having a psychotic episode, and then you have a safety ambassador showing up with a clipboard, and they give them a note and tell them to call Dr. Laura?
She's still on the radio?
I think on the satellite.
That is a violation of the Americans with Disability Act, and it's also an incredible loss of talent. And acumen. So we have students that our tax dollars are helping them get into college and helping them get going on college. And when they get sick, we want them to be able to come back and to finish when they're able. So this bill would give clarity to what colleges and universities need to do.
Wait, so you can say, I have a mental health crisis. I need to take a couple of years off as soon as you're about to fail a class and then come back?
None of this makes any sense. It's because she doesn't want to fundamentally react and diffuse a situation and take someone who's breaking the law and put them in jail. Because frequently what happens is it's not just that someone's having a psychotic episode, they're breaking the law. There's something that they're doing that's illegal that sparks someone to call 911. If someone's just sitting there talking to themselves, you don't call 911 typically because you see that all around you. But if their pants are down around their ankles, or they're stealing your mail, or they're doing something abusing an animal, let's say, or open air drug use, that's when people call 911. And what she's essentially saying is we need to ignore the fact that they're breaking the law because being homeless is now a protected class.
I'm also really excited about the mental health specialists that we funded during the pandemic to go into schools. These are not your grandmother's guidance counselor. And they let, by the way, the guidance...
Yeah, that one only got one laugh.
Yeah, the charitable woman.
And they let, by the way, the guidance...
How much of a donor is she? She's donating her laughs to this cause.
By the way, the guidance counselor do their job. which is to identify academic supports and help connect people to resources. These mental health specialists provide direct therapy, but they also teach resiliency and coping skills. When you have half to a third of kids saying they're experiencing anxiety or depression, that is not a problem you can just deal with one therapist at a time.
No, that's when you need Ritalin.
Well, you wouldn't be the candy man if you didn't bring the sunshine.
You need to treat it as what it is becoming, which is a big public health crisis in the United States. The last thing I'll mention is I like to light insurance companies on fire about mental health. We passed the
Well, you got that in common with people on meth. They like to light things on fire, too.
I like to light insurance companies on fire about mental health. We passed the Affordable Care Act. We promised that mental health would have parity with physical health. This is
Who brought their baby to this?
All the way to the Laugh Factory, it was at the Improv.
When you're at $1,000 a plate dinner at a fundraiser to support a candidate, do you have to pay for the baby, too, or does the baby get a free ride like at Disneyland?
Or on the airlines.
This is a great example of the need for oversight. We passed that law, and shocker, big insurance didn't do it. And here we are 10 years later, and what we know is when you look at your insurance and it says the copay for mental health and is the same, and you think you're going to have this coverage, but then when you or someone covered under your plan needs it, what you learn is there's nobody in network, there's nobody taking new patients, there's nobody without a 6-month wait list. And as I said to Kaiser Permanente, and I'm a Kaiser patient, that's why I have my health insurance in Congress, is through Kaiser. When you take someone's money for a service and you don't give it to them, that's called stealing. And they said,
Wait a minute.
This is a real easy crowd.
If members of Congress all have Kaiser for their health insurance, how do they live to be 90?
When you take someone's money for a service and you don't give it to them, that's called stealing. And they said, we don't like the sound of that. And I said, do you prefer cheating? So our employees...
This is the best audience in the world.
Yeah, they don't give her that kind of reaction at these committee hearings when she's working the material out.
Our employers and we are all paying for these premiums, and the insurance companies know that they do not have the network of providers, and it's due in part to the lousy reimbursement rate that we give to mental health professionals. So really proud.
By the way, when you're working a stage and you've got a crying baby in your face, how irritated is she that supporter brought the baby?
Oh, you can tell she's going to smack whoever brought the baby as soon as she's done.
Really proud that
maybe dump some boiling hot potatoes on their head.
Really proud that a number of my mental health parity laws were passed into law. One of them would require something you can't believe we didn't do 10 years ago, HHS to actually audit mental health providers at the insurance level and look at things like network.
You've lost the baby, Katie.
It's a Barbara Lee supporter.
Things like network adequacy and limitations on treatment, on how many appointments you can get and things like that. So really excited about that.
That is just one of many, many, many topics that Katie Porter covered in this stand-up comedy special at a fundraiser in Hollywood.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, the weekend is quickly approaching. If you want to listen to us on Saturday or Sunday, that's easy to do.
That's right. Just go to KBC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. And whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday, you can listen to shows that happen on Monday,
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday,
or Friday.
Right now, we're going through the sound of California Congresswoman Katie Porter at a private fundraiser that was surreptitiously recorded by someone in the room and posted online.
I think they posted it because they liked what they were listening to, but I'm so glad that they did. Where do you want to go with this, Johnny? Consumer protection, housing, being a policy warrior, oversight, income inequality, income maintenance, which is a fancy way to say UBI, AI, committees, voters. Where do you want to go with this?
Let's hear her on housing.
Here we go. Katie Porter, live in Hollywood.
We need to really put a focus on housing. And let me tell you, I think, a really powerful symbol of where Washington has lost sight of how to think about housing, and it goes directly to your question about public housing. There is no housing committee in the United States Senate or the United States House. There is in the Assembly and the Senate and the legislature, but there's not in Congress. It is a subcommittee of banking. And that
Wait, was that a punchline?
She got some laughs out of the audience.
banking.
All right, how plots is this audience? Was it a 5-drink minimum or a 6-drink minimum?
I think I'd have to have more than that to enjoy this.
In fact, if it's $1,000 a plate, it better be an open bar.
Do you get seconds?
And that tells you how we have been thinking about housing, which is that it's something to kind of grease the wheels of Wall Street and our economy. It's something to make sure that we don't fall into a recession. And these things, many of us have lived through this. I came to California during this period and helped fight to keep people from losing their houses to foreclosure. But housing is so much more. And we have seen the private market will build some kinds of housing and not others. They need to have federal backstop and federal investment. And when I say
we need the feds to encourage them to build more slums.
That's what we're missing.
And when I say investment, I mean money, but I mean more than that. I mean a partnership. I mean better data. I mean better imagination about what housing in this country could look like. The public housing that we built 30 and 40 and 50 years ago, we know created as many problems as it solved. But that doesn't mean you can't go back to the drawing board and rethink and use the best data that you can.
Katie Porter's for the projects.
That's going back to the future.
California's problem is we have virtually no public housing. And so our problem is...
Well, except if you're a former teacher at UC Irvine.
Yeah. She has plenty of public housing, and she's not even teaching there anymore, but she still hasn't given it up.
And so our problem is when we talk about funding public housing, all of that money will go to rehab existing public housing on the East Coast, not to building new public housing in California and on the West Coast, and Colorado and other places that are growing. So I've been thinking a lot about how we can have the federal government backstop and create the private market incentives to build the housing that they will never build if they're not there. And let me give you an example. 30-year mortgage only exists because the federal government backstops it. The only bank I know that will make a 30-year fixed rate loan is Silicon Valley Bank. And look how that worked out.
Hey-o!
She loves to go after the banks.
Right? So the 30-year mortgage, everybody who has a 30-year mortgage, that's because...
Was this live event, this fundraiser, in a flight path?
So you've got crying babies, you've got planes flying overhead, and you've got phony, disingenuous laughing.
The 30-year mortgage, everybody who has a...
What a great Saturday night.
The 30-year mortgage, everybody who has a 30-year mortgage, that's because the federal government's backstop.
Is that a blimp?
There are things we could do for housing that are in between the 30-year mortgage, which is out...
Oh, that's the stealth bomber that got lost in South Carolina. It's over Katie Porter's head.
Which is out of reach for most people in California who do not currently own homes. Not some, most. That is one of the biggest political divides we have, is between homeowners and non-homeowners. Even though
Wait, we don't call them renters anymore. We call them non-homeowners.
Oh, yes. You're not homeless. You're unhoused.
I'm the unmortgaged.
Between homeowners and non-homeowners, even though we don't often think about it or talk about it that way. That 30-year mortgage and then the 1-year lease with no protection, no stability, no connection to your community, no ability to have financial security. There are things you could have in between there. So think about a 4-year lease for college students so they could lock in housing, security, and price at the time they start going to college. Think about
Oh, they're coming for her.
Okay, what she is suggesting here is what screwed up our insurance market. She was talking about lighting the insurance companies on fire moments ago. There are two main reasons that the insurance companies are pulling out of the California market. And climate change is not one of them. One of the reasons they're pulling out is because of our regulations in terms of what they can charge you. It's like what, a 10-year average or something along those lines? So if the prices jump up dramatically, they can't pass that on to the consumer. Fine. You pay less to your insurance company. But maybe your insurance company stops selling policies in California because they can't make any money. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make a profit. They're not a non-for-profit business. If they lose money by staying in this market, then they're not doing their job. So what they do is they pull out. The other issue are the cost of materials. And government spending, which is what she's advocating for, is what creates inflation that contributes to the cost of those materials going up. She wants to do to housing what we've done to insurance. You can't buy insurance right now in California from some of the blue chip companies, and my guess is in the coming years, you're going to add more companies to that list. We have thoroughly screwed that market up, and now she wants to do it again in housing.
Think about housing for seniors. That was a long-term lease to the end of their life that adjusted upward in relationship to the cost of living adjustment in Social Security. These are things the private market won't do unless we backstop them, but we need to fill in this gap. So do I think public housing is part of the solution? Yes. Do I think we're going to solve the entire problem with public housing? I don't. We are in a situation where we need a sort of all of the above approach to housing, but what we need most of all at the federal level is a leader on this. Somebody who sees housing as the number one challenge, because it is. It is the number one challenge when you talk to Californians. My own son, who's 15.
You know, I heard that this fundraiser was in Hollywood. I'm starting to think that it's at Hollywood Burbank Airport.
My own son, who's 15, asked me if I would visit him if he didn't live in California when he grew up. And I said...
Only one chuckle for that one.
What kind of relationship do they have if you don't think your mother would come visit you if you moved to Nevada?
Well, where's the father live right now?
And I said, Paul, like, you love California. This is my kid who wants to work in movies. Like, why would you ever leave California? And he said, well, I think I might want to have a house, and I know I can't have one here. That's where...
That one guy loved that one.
Yeah, because he's got the same problem.
I'm broke.
That's where we are. And that's the question that parents and business owners are hearing and confronting over and over again. So I think the answer is public investment in housing, whether that is straight up traditional public housing or kind of a range of different things. We need to get going. And what I hear federal leaders right now doing are two things. One is talking only...
She's got a heckler, and the heckler is 2 years old.
Only about chronic street homelessness. That is a terrible, painful, both morally, it's an expensive, it's a terrible problem. But it is...
It's so terrible that it's terrible.
That's quite a list of descriptive adjectives.
It's terrible, it's immoral, and it's terrible.
But it is the tip of an iceberg. Street homelessness didn't come out of nowhere. It's not a fad. It is directly related to the cost of housing and people working.
You sure about that?
No, that's not what created meth. The high cost of housing has nothing to do with meth.
People working full-time, even 2 jobs, unable to keep a roof over their head. We're not going to solve homelessness without changing the housing market, fundamentally. And then the second thing is I hear federal leaders who say, thank you for your question on housing. That's really a state issue. And then you hear the state leader who explains to you that it's a county issue, and then you hear the county leader who explains to you that it's a city issue, and then the answer...
Boy, each one of those got one laugh from one different person.
She must have compiled an entire room full of sycophants.
And then the answer is, are we going to build, ADUs and like garage apartments in backyards? Well, I think the answer should be yes. We are not going to solve a 50-year failure to invest in housing, one garage conversion at a time, okay? That's not how we're going to get there. So do I think those are a good tool? Yes. Do I think people should do it? Yes. That is not a substitute for federal leadership on housing, and as your next U.S. Senator, that's what I'm going to provide.
So there you have it. Her solution to housing, let's treat it like the way we treated the insurance industry in the state of California. Have Cato Kalin move into your garage and more favelas. I guess we should all learn Portuguese.
What's going on, America?
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Kurt's right. Kurt writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Here's an incoming bad joke about Katie Porter in Huntington Beach. Katie Porter is a stout woman who causes me to drink dark beer just to listen to her stump speeches.
He could be the opening act.
Now, that was the cleanest one I could read. You know what's been going on with the email bag.
I was having computer problems, and I just got the email to work, so I'm going to have to go through it the next commercial break.
There's some fun ones in there.
As the fake doctor would say, I have tech issues.
No, thank you.
Right now, we're going through the sound of Katie Porter's speech at a fundraiser in Hollywood.
Katie Porter discusses the topic of income maintenance, which is a fancy way to say free money.
The research on income maintenance is really interesting, and I think ties directly into questions about the future of work and about what kinds of jobs we're going to have and what those jobs are going to ask of us going forward. The research, if you haven't looked at it at all, on income maintenance is unbelievable. When you give people a little bit more money and a little bit more certainty, do you know what they do? They spend a little bit more on food.
Well, we know where her mind is.
They spend a little bit more on food. It's hard to begrudge a little bit more on food.
What's the cleanest way to say this? Somebody emailed us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says the $1,000 a plate dinner didn't have the first course, only the second course, because you know what happened to the first course.
This is her shtick. And, you know, a lot of people can say that politicians aren't honest. The fact that everything that comes out of this woman's mouth is associated with food is, I think, the most honest thing any politician has ever done.
They spend a little bit more on food, and they are more likely to stay at work and to get promoted. So this idea that if we give them a little something, they won't do anything, that my colleagues espouse, is absolutely the reverse. So when you give people a little bit of income certainty, they take that risk to go apply for that new job. They're able to buy that little bit more reliable car that'll let them commute an extra 10 or 20 miles to get to work. They're able to
Apparently, we have no shortage of pilots right now.
They're able to take that last night class or get childcare part-time so they can go back into the workplace. So I think we are confused in the United States about how a capitalist economy really works. And how it should work is that the gains go to the people who create the wealth. And that includes people who do the work.
No, that's not what she's suggesting. The people who create the wealth are the people who are doing fine, because when you create wealth, you keep some of it. What she is suggesting is to take from those people and give it to the deadbeats so they can buy more bacon. All right, we'll have more from Katie Porter coming up later on in the show. And Katie Grimes from the California Globe joins us next. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.
But the thing I think that makes me stand out even more is the political leader that we need to be shopping for. I have knocked hundreds of doors in Huntington Beach, and I am still having fun in politics.